As we moved into the age of video games, one question became the forefront of many people's minds. Will this new technology, this new medium of entertainment, bring something of value to society? When looking through the past, it was easy to spot different works from different entertainment venues that had a value towards society. We could look back amongst the works of Twain to find messages of anti-racism. We could watch Citizen Kane and learn the ins and outs of early filmmaking. We could listen to Pink Floyd and find its anti-establishmentarianism. But what could this toy bring to the table? This system of beeps and boops, of vivid colors and strange mechanics, what could this ever show society? Little did society know that it would begin to hold up the mirror and show society its own reflection. And no such game does this better than the Metal Gear Solid franchise. One series that dominates the hearts and minds of people for having deep, moving stories, engaging gameplay, and most importantly to me, the ability to raise questions in the mind of its viewer. What is destiny? What is freedom? What is content without context? How can I truly know what's real? Does it matter? The Metal Gear Solid series does an amazing job of bringing up these various ideas in a way that its viewer, or rather, the player, can comprehend. In this video, we'll be looking at some of the various topics that have stuck to me over the years. Please enjoy. What is the concept of destiny, or rather, what does it mean to you? To many, destiny is an idea that no matter what happens, everything is set on a predetermined path. Nothing you've chosen to do matters because it was already going to happen. In the subject of Judeo-religious systems, this is usually a contradictory idea with the concept of God, as in that circumstance, God's plan is known, yet he gives humanity free will. Similarly, in the Metal Gear Solid series, destiny is called into question many, many times. In a simplified plot premise of the first game, the titular character Solid Snake is tasked with tracking down terrorists in Alaska, led by his brother, Liquid Snake. Liquid and Solid are both clones of the super spy, Big Boss. However, it is made apparent to Solid Snake, through Liquid, that Solid received the dominant genes, and Liquid received the recessive. Supposedly, this makes Solid the super soldier. However, a post-credit scene counters this.
Yes, Liquid is dead. The inferior one was the winner after all. That's right. Until the very end, Liquid thought he was the inferior one. Of course, the other one thinks so too.
It is revealed by this line one of two things. 1. Liquid's recessive genes were in fact the superior ones, as recessive does not equal inferior. 2. Liquid actually had the dominant genes. Kojima intentionally leaves this ambiguous enough for the player to have their own interpretation, but the overarching meaning behind the situation remains largely the same. It's important to understand that going into this fight, Liquid believes wholeheartedly that he was inferior to Solid Snake due to his genetic structure.
But they weren't finished yet. They used me as a guinea pig to create a phenotype in which all of the dominant genes were expressed to create you. I got all the recessive genes. You took everything from me before I was even born.
So what does this mean? In trying to best Solid Snake and become the dominant power in the world, Liquid himself was going against what he's assumed his destiny to be, that he would be the weaker of the warriors. But he would not sit and take this destiny lying down. He would fight to prove himself, to survive, much like the runt of the litter. Snake defeating him seemingly cemented destiny in its place, the weaker falling before the stronger. However, the final codec call with Ocelot and the President confirms that this is in fact the opposite. Recessive or not, Solid Snake was actually the weaker of the two, and he should have lost. But he didn't, defiling the pre-cut path that may have been given to him by birth. Whether it be good or bad, Kojima is trying to convey that no matter what circumstances are presented to you, you forge your own path. And at the end of the day, you are in charge of your destiny, and taking that to heart brings you one step closer to your own freedom. However, in his next game, Kojima then begins to play with the idea of whether or not that freedom even matters. Freedom is an interesting concept for many. What does it mean to be free? Are you free? Am I free? But the most important question I feel is this: does it matter? And quite possibly, that's something that Mr. Kojima wishes to explore himself. The game Metal Gear Solid 2 tends to divide its fanbase. At least it did when I was a bit younger. Some people love it, some people hate it. However you feel about this game, it does raise some of the most important questions in the entire philosophical side of the series. The overarching plot for Metal Gear Solid 2 is too complicated to fit into 1 or 2 paragraphs, but here's a rough summary of some of the latter events in the game. A young man named Raiden has been trying to deal with terrorists who have plans and a means of production for a new Metal Gear. His whole mission he has been conversing with the Colonel, the familiar character from the first game, as well as Rose, his girlfriend who, somehow, was allowed to be a contact for this mission. Along the way he meets a man named Iroquois Pliskin, who is totally not Solid Snake from the first game. There's a guy named Solidus Snake, who is pretending to be Solid Snake, and it turns out he's actually the 3rd clone of Big Boss. However, he is a perfect clone because he has a balance of recessive and dominant genes. Towards the end of the game, shit starts getting really weird, and it turns out this Colonel has actually been an envoy of the artificial intelligence named the Patriots, who've been pulling the strings of the mission the whole time, along with having Rose date Raiden for the last 2 or 3 years to get into his life. Are you still with me? Because frankly, if you're not, I don't blame you. Metal Gear Solid 2 has a complicated plot, but most of the explanation was essential to understanding the theming and discussion of freedom that Metal Gear Solid 2 presents.
All this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
It will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context.
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
This is probably the most famous scene in the entire game. The AI has been exposed, and it's revealing its entire plan and reasoning to Raiden. It wishes to control the flow of information in the world, as it's become oversaturated with information that, frankly, doesn't matter. You know, much like our modern-day internet. Keep in mind, this was a game that came out in 2001. In this mentality, the Patriots wish to control the state of mankind, for what it believes is the better good. It believes by trimming the fat of information from the conscious mind of man, it would allow humanity to thrive, and to grow, and to evolve. But at the price of free information. It's not entirely wrong.
You exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. All rhetoric to avoid conflict and protect each other from hurt. The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Not even natural selection can take place here. The world is being engulfed in truth.
And this is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
So what does this all have to do with freedom? Well, George Sears, aka Solidus Snake, rejects these ideals.
That's right. George Washington took office as the first president of the United States of America 200 years ago today. And it happened right here. We were going to declare another independence, the dawn of a new nation, here. The end of the Patriots' secret rule, liberation of this country. This was where it was supposed to begin. This is where freedom could have been born.
Obviously, we have two conflicting ideals here. The freedom that the Patriots present is one that eliminates anything they find to be unnecessary. The freedom that Solidus presents is one where humanity is in charge of humanity. And Raiden here is stuck in the middle, questioning the reality of all this. You see, Raiden himself is a product of child warfare and of virtual reality training. Of course, Snake is quick to remind him that VR training isn't real. I know it seems what I'm explaining here has little bearing to the situation at hand, but bear with me. Kojima here is alluding to the fact that Pliskin, aka Snake, who doesn't use VR training, is more grounded here in the situation, whereas Raiden, who has done plenty of it, is questioning everything. Arguably, who could blame Raiden, as this entire situation is insane. Why is this important? The creating context refers to censoring of media. The VR training refers to being brainwashed into fooling yourself. And that's the whole point of Metal Gear Solid 2, that the censorship of information deprives freedom, and once you lose that freedom, you will form a new reality around yourself, one that lacks actual meaning. And once that happens, the world begins to collapse. Not with a bang,
but a whimper.
A common theme through the entirety of the series is that of legacy and its value. The Philosopher's Legacy, the legacy of the boss, the legacy of Big Boss, the legacy of Solid Snake, they're all brought into question. What value does a legacy actually have?
You can say that because you're a legend, a hero. I'm Jack the Ripper, a dirty reminder of a terrible mistake.
Legends don't mean a whole lot. I was just a name to exploit, just like you.
People will remember only the good part, the right part of what you did.
There's no right part in murder. Not ever. And we're not in this to make a name for ourselves.
Here we see Solid Snake explaining to Raiden that the idea of a legacy doesn't matter, mostly for his belief that, essentially, actions speak louder than words. Being someone who operates in the shadows, he doesn't really need or care about what the general public thinks of his actions, because he knows that he does them for the good cause. It's lightly touched upon in Metal Gear Solid 2 that legacies can be corrupted or used for ill gain, in the idea that Solidus Snake is taking the mantle of Solid Snake. However, it wasn't until Metal Gear Solid 3 that the idea of corruption of a legacy became very prevalent. The boss is one of the most complex characters in the Metal Gear Solid franchise, in video games as a whole. A strong, caring, devoted individual who seemingly defects to Russia in the middle of the Cold War, causing her to be abandoned by her home nation of the United States. Naked Snake, her pupil, is tasked with tracking her down and killing her. However, it's revealed that this mission was established and carried out to have the boss act as a scapegoat. The boss was assigned this mission by the United States, to defect to Russia, to be hunted by Naked Snake, and to be killed by his hand.
The authorities in Washington knew that in order to prove its innocence, they'd have to get rid of the boss. And that one of their own would have to do the job. The public couldn't be allowed to find out about it. Not ever. This, they concluded, would be the best way to keep the whole thing under wraps. The boss wouldn't be allowed to come back home alive. And she wouldn't be allowed to kill herself. Her life would be ended by her most beloved disciple.
Here we have one of the most prime examples in the series in terms of a legacy being disjointed and distorted, and what it does to the character. The boss and Naked Snake have a relationship so complex, it deserves its own video, but in summation, Naked Snake cared deeply for the boss. So deeply that, upon being given the title of Big Boss after killing her, he leaves the United States to find himself and form his own nation of soldiers. The boss was a character that represented the idea of a tainted legacy. Her final mission was to save the face of America, and she paid the ultimate price to do so. And in doing so, she would be hated by anybody who didn't know the truth. But as with most legacies in the Metal Gear Solid series, it comes down to one thing. Legacies don't mean much. What it comes down to is truth. There are many other topics to discuss with the Metal Gear Solid series as a whole, and all of its games deserve their own videos discussing the philosophical ideals that they bring to the table. Like life itself, the ideals presented do not mean much unless you give them context to operate. At the end of the day, like philosophy itself, they're very open to interpretation, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've put a lot of love into this video because I wanted to start the video off with a new series. This is obviously the first in that series, but I hopefully will be able to get this going into a more regular, hopefully monthly video. Obviously, it's going to be the philosophy of games, as you can probably tell already. I have other games planned for this series, but if you have some ideas, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to take a look into some games maybe I've never played and see what I can find. If you enjoy more of my sillier videos, then here's a link to one of them up there. If you want a more other seriouser video, then maybe that second link is one to a seriouser video. And if you liked what you see, don't forget to subscribe. If you want more of this type of stuff, please leave a like. Like I said already, leave a comment for suggestions for another video. And yeah, if you want to see more amazing content from other guys who are much more talented than me, go ahead and go to limitedlives.com. You'll meet a bunch of YouTubers who are very, very talented and very much would love your attention. And frankly, all of them deserve it. With that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Always remember, video games are the best video games. Later.